Hi, welcome to the Gastroenteritis Blues. My name is Steve Lippman, joined as always by both of my colleagues here at Gastroenteritis Blues International, Dan Volpone, Emily Cannell. Emily, your birthday was yesterday when recording this. Happy birthday from
Thank
all
you.
of us.
Thank you.
Applause come in here. Happy birthday. And we were talking off mic. You said that you watched Harry Potter. Would you have a favorite Harry Potter? I don't know those films, but which one's your favorite?
I don't know, maybe like the third one, but the books are just better, so I don't really know.
Do you have a favorite character in those films? One of the ones that flies around.
I like Ron a lot. I think he's quite funny
Red
in the
hair.
movies. Yeah.
Red hair. Great. Dan, do you like those films, or are they not among
have
the four
you've
seen?
Dan?
Yeah.
I have seen them because I think I don't know, like most children my age, I read the books, in like second grade and whatnot. But I don't know, I wouldn't rewatch the movies or reread the books. They're fine, I guess, they're okay.
I've reread the books like at least 7 times.
Whoa. Wow.
Yeah. I do it probably annually. I reread them.
Wow. Good for you. All right. On today's show, our very own Harry Potter, because he's a wizard with his reporting. Yaron Weitzman is going to be on the show. Now of Fox Sports. He's been on the show, I believe, twice before, which begs the question, Emily, have you ever met him? Have you been on the show when Yaron's been on?
It's a great question. I think I have. I have.
Okay. I believe the last time he was on was during the Simmons holdout, and so maybe a year ago or so. But Yaron's great. Yaron just dropped a feature exclusive interview article with James Harden. So we'll talk to him about that process and some of the other reporting he does. So Yaron is excellent, does great work. And he, of course, is the author of Tanking to the Top. Very excited to talk to him. That'll be the second half of the podcast. So if you want to skip ahead, go right ahead. In the meantime, the Sixers. Their winning streak has ended, but not before a couple of good wins. I think the best win of the season was against the Clippers. They were down by 20. The guy proposed to his girlfriend in the middle of the court, and then they turned it around and came back, and Embiid and Harden played really well. They beat the Clippers, basically the full strength Clippers, just no John Wall. And then on Christmas Day, they played a bad first half and then came back and beat the Knicks in Madison Square Garden. Very fun to watch them do that on Christmas Day. Now, we're not going to talk about the report on Christmas Day because we're going to talk about that with Yaron, but so we're just going to step over that unpleasantness on Christmas Day. And then they lost to Washington in a predictable loss that I believe was the only one that predicted, because they, I think, always lose in Washington. I'm just happy they got out of there alive. Yeah. So of the games this week, is there anything you want to talk about? I'm happy. They won 8 in a row. Did not get the undefeated week in our purposes, but they're playing well. Joel just scores like 40 points every night. Nobody ever talks about it. Nobody talks about it. Harden looks really good. He's, basically at like 23 and 12 right now. And I think the on-court chemistry is looking really good. I mean, they're playing well, and I think that the arrow is pointing up. And Tyrese Maxey is set to return on Friday. He's probable right now. That's what's listed, and against the Pelicans. So, Emily, how do you feel right now? And any reflection on these games from the week?
Yeah, I feel overall positively about the team. Like the way they're playing more, I feel like they're moving the ball more. They're playing defense. They're except in the first half of the Knicks game, but other than that, they're just kind of playing basketball more like how they should and sharing the ball. I like that they're getting bench guys involved. Shake's been really good. Tobias is still playing really well, still catching and shooting and not thinking as much. So yeah, I hope that they can incorporate Maxey back into what they've got going and just keep it going.
What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, they always lose that Wizards game, so I'm not gonna, freak out over it. I think, the one thing from that Wizards game was Tobias had been playing so well, and he all of a sudden looked scared in the second half once his shots weren't going. And, if he wants to, have us tell a friend to tell a friend that he's a sharpshooter, then he's going to have to keep shooting when he misses his first few shots. The team's going to need that. A sharpshooter would do it.
Well,
So,
what are we supposed to tell our friends now?
right. I feel like I told all my friends, and then they watched that game, and now they feel misled. They're mad at me. So that
was a bad loss. I glossed over it, but it was a predictable loss because they were playing in Washington. But that was a bad loss. Like they fumbled
well,
it
everyone
away
played
down the
poorly
stretch.
besides Embiid and Harden,
Right.
which I guess that'll happen some nights. I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna get hung up on it, but the Knicks game was a lot of fun. Obviously, Clippers game was probably win of the year, but the Knicks game was, Christmas Day had you kind of edge of your seat early, a little anxious, because they're down. They kind of fought back, and fourth quarter really pulled away. So, they definitely looked good. I think what you said about Embiid getting overlooked is correct, and we can talk about that in a bit. But the one thing that worries me right now is Tucker. He looks really, really bad.
We got to talk about him.
He needs to be a lot better. Like seriously needs to be a lot better. Or they need to look into if it's even possible to upgrade that salary slot at the deadline. He can't, and it might not be because he's making the MLE to do nothing right now. But he is really, looking like he can't defend even decent players at this point. Whereas at least early in the season, he played some good defense, and he's not taking the threes. He's missing a lot of close shots. Like he's not even close from 7 feet. He's just missing everything. And that worries me. That's the biggest thing that worries me, but I'm excited to get Maxey back. I think, they shouldn't have a problem finding a role for him, whether it's, off the bench, as Doc alluded to, being a possibility that I had floated out there before, or if they're going to start him, and bring Melton off the bench. Either way, I think.
Or bring PJ off the bench. Yeah.
Well, yeah, if they're going to go, I think they should experiment with a lot of 3-guard lineups because they have 4 really good guards. And so I would be really happy to see some of that worked in. And, we'll see. I think, the Wizards game, was a little frustrating, but none of their guys can make shots. They're going to make shots. And Embiid and Harden played well. Those are the guys who play well every night. But Niang's going to shoot better, and Melton will shoot better, and hopefully Tucker figures something out. It's just encouraging that we've seen a lot of good play from the role guys. They all had a bad night on one night. I don't think that'll happen that often. And then Embiid and Harden have been pretty consistent, and they went down against the Wizards in a game they always lose. They were down every game this week, but they were down against the Wizards in a game they always lose. And they didn't win that one. They won the first 2, but it was a third straight example of them, not kind of hanging their heads when they get down, not, showing poor body language. They fought till the very end. They got it close. There was no instance where you as a fan felt like they were giving up. I think we had a lot of those early in the year. So I continue to be encouraged by that.
You mentioned PJ. The reporting, and I believe what he said, is that he has a dead hand. Now, Emily, is this a medical term?
Not one that I know, but why? I just don't understand why we're playing a person with a dead hand.
Now,
can't you do occupational therapy for that?
He probably should get occupational therapy. He needs some upper extremity rehab. It sounds like a nerve injury. I don't understand.
Listen, yes, yeah. So apparently, they dive a little deeper, and apparently it's a nerve injury in his hand.
What nerve? Do we know?
His hand nerve. I don't know. Get him off the court. He looks terrible. I honestly don't know. But what he's saying is that he has a dead hand. How long has his hand been dead? I don't know. But hasn't been playing well all year.
Well, I
He's
thought
been
he injured it in
37
that
all year.
Washington game.
What'd you say?
He injured it in that Washington game, like where you could see.
No, the
No,
report
he
came
said
out
it
over
earlier.
Christmas.
That's not. Oh,
No.
I didn't
Yeah.
even
It
hear
was the
that. Okay.
Cassidy report.
So
Yeah.
what happened in the Washington game then, where he didn't come back in?
Well, he was shaking the hell out of it. 'cause
Right. I thought
He
that's when
probably
he
killed
heard
it
it.
more. He probably killed it more.
Oh,
I don't know.
it's
how do you kill
like
something
it's
that's
like
already
a
a
murder
dead?
murder
hand
spot
now.
bribe. You could be mostly dead, or
It's
you
a
could
murder
be,
mystery.
you could be fully
Yeah.
dead.
I don't know, but it seems like bad news. I think rest him for a while. Does he need surgery? I don't know. I'm this is not my area of expertise. All I know is that he doesn't look right. Julius Randle was absolutely killing him on Christmas Day, and everybody on Twitter was like, "Put Tobias on him." It's like, what's PJ's job? If his job isn't to guard like Julius Randle, then Jesus, what is he doing here? He on occasion he helps on offensive rebounds and that's nice, but like,
But he plays the four, and he's so small, and they're so like
it's
he's
bad.
he's
Listen,
not a very helpful rebounding piece
I really think
in
they should
comparison to other people playing his position.
put him on the shelf for a while and figure out how to resuscitate his hand. I don't know what to do, but his fucking hand's dead. So do something about it. I don't know, but get the doctors in there because he's like shaking his hand awake. I don't know, but it's bad and they need to do something about it. I don't know. Help him out. Speaking of the Knicks and Tobias, Ian Begley of SNY reported that the Knicks have talked internally about trying to acquire Tobias Harris. Tobias is from, I believe, Long Island, and Tobias has been very good this year for the Sixers, and I don't want anything from the Knicks. So I think this is a pretty easy conversation that no thank you. So Dan, how do you feel?
Yeah, I agree with you. I just want to add that I think a team with Julius Randle and Tobias Harris, if Tobias Harris were to, kind of fall back into some of his old bad habits, would be maybe the most unwatchable team in the history of the NBA. Like maybe more unwatchable than like 40s basketball. Like that could be that bad. So
But they'd still be on Christmas. You can watch them on Christmas Day every year.
No matter what.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I think that would be kind of awesome, but also just horrible. And from a Sixers perspective, I agree. I don't really see the incentive to trade Tobias at this point when he's probably still gonna, like, the Knicks are probably thinking about it like, oh, it's a bad contract, but he's good enough that maybe it's worth taking on that bad contract to get something small back in return. Whereas if you're the Sixers, you're already so all in on this year. You lost 2 second-round picks by being so clearly, violating the rules to sign PJ Tucker and Daniel House, who are not that good. And
House doesn't look like he knows at all what he's doing. He has a lot
of James Ennis in him, I have to say.
Ennis was good.
Well, yeah, but Ennis would also.
But no, he does a lot of flailing around. Yeah.
He did a lot of things where he occasionally looked like he had never played basketball, and then other times where he looked phenomenal. House has
he has too many limbs. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't see the purpose of just getting off of Tobias, and I don't really see what we'd get back. So and really Tobias isn't a very good rebounder, and that's probably the biggest thing because our forwards aren't rebounding. Joel is, for as good as he is not that good of a rebounder, and they really get killed when he helps off when a guy gets beat. And really I don't understand. No one is ever helping him when he helps off of his man, or even just sliding in to box his man out. So that's one thing that has been a problem among the fact that Sixers just don't have very good rebounders. But that said, I don't think they're going to get like an elite rebounder back for Tobias. I don't know who on the Knicks that would be, and I don't really understand why the Sixers would be too interested in this. I mean, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's a trade that really works out, but I don't see how this works for both teams.
Yeah. Emily, any interest in what the Knicks have to offer here for Tobias?
No, not in particular. There's really
good time for me to ask you another question. I meant to ask you when we talked about the Clippers game. You know, like that fella asked that lady to marry him on the court. You and Jordy go to a lot of games. Would you like, in a previous life, if he had proposed to you in that manner, if he had popped out of whatever he popped out of, Franklin's next to him, on bended knee, middle of the Sixers court, how would you have reacted? Obviously, you probably say yes because you love him in the moment, but deep down, how do you feel?
I probably would have been okay with it.
Yeah, pretty cool. Fun.
I like the Sixers. Like,
Giant
it's
Sixers
not like-
fans.
it would be dumb if he took me to like a thing that I hated, but I love the Sixers, so that would be cool.
There you go. All right. Last thing before we do predictions, before we get to Yaron, is I feel like nobody's talking about Joel in any of the MVP talk, which maybe is fine, and maybe the only thing that matters is winning. I disagree because it feels probably unlikely. Only one team wins, so who cares? Joel is leading the league in scoring. He's having huge nights like all the time, and I feel like nobody ever talks about it. You know, Luka just had this huge game where he had, I think it was like 60 and 20 and some other number, and
10.
Joel and 10, and Joel had, I think, 59, 20, and 8 or 9 against Utah.
It was 50. He had 59, 11, like 9 and 7 or something, or 8 and 7.
Something like that. So a somewhat like equally preposterous line in regular time, not overtime, against Utah towards the beginning of the year. And it seems like nobody cared about it, and everybody's been having like a 2-day meltdown over Luka. And it seems like they're just guys that, you know, like Kevin Durant said last year about the Joel, Giannis, Jokic thing. He was just like, people like Jokic and Giannis more than they like Joel. Like, it's just like, you know, guys like them and they don't like Joel as much. And that's just what it feels like. It feels like nobody in the media, in the national media, I guess, has any interest in giving Joel any benefit of the doubt whatsoever. So that's just what it feels like to me, you know, because the Sixers have been way better. They're just on a super long winning streak that it feels like nobody was talking about either. Right as the Nets were doing the same thing. And it just feels like, you know, I saw somebody writing about how he's on nobody's like MVP ladder, and, you know, his rebounding has been bad and he needs to just be better at it just by trying harder at rebounding, frankly, because there's no reason that he should be this bad at it. But yeah, so I just noticed this and wondered if you guys have too, Emily.
Yeah, I've noticed it. I don't even remember where I saw it, but I saw someone report like Joel might not even start in the All-Star game. And I'm just like, what?
Oh, that
Yeah.
too.
They take 3 forwards, so Tatum, KD, and Giannis will probably start.
Well, they should just make Tatum a guard forward. He handles the ball so much. Like, that seems such an easy fix. Like,
Well, Steve, they only make these easy fixes when they benefit players they like.
it's true.
I mean, DeRozan started as a guard last year, right? Because they wanted DeRozan to start.
Right.
And DeRozan didn't really play any guard in the first half of last season because Lonzo was healthy and Levine was playing. But
Right.
it doesn't
This
matter.
just goes back to the theory that the national media hates Philly and Joel and all of us. So
Right.
I mean, there is like, I've tweeted about this in like dumb little rants, but like the national media for basketball is really, really bad. They do a really bad job covering the game. And I don't mean like the Stephen A. Smiths and like talk show people and stuff, but like people who are like Zach Lowe, perfect example, right? Like people who are, you know, whose thoughts are read through this lens of you know, kind of like, you know, giving them the benefit of the doubt that they are, you know, unbiased and, you know, extremely thoughtful in their you know, in their analysis. And I'm not trying to single out Zach Lowe. I just think he's a great example of like, you know, someone who is I'm not trying to say he's dumb or anything like that, but he has like pretty clear bias, right? Like, is there anything to make it more obvious than, changing his mind about
Yeah.
the, how first all NBA first team voting should be done as, the players surrounding the conversation changed. I think you can see consistently that the media is biased towards, Nikola Jokic over Joel Embiid and has been over the last few years, to the point where, Jokic, who's actually won the award the last 2 years, doesn't seem to be having any, fatigue, and he is now back in the MVP conversation. And Joel, who hasn't even won the award but has been in the conversation, he's the one getting voter fatigue.
Right.
Now, there could be a lot of reasons. There could be combinations of reasons. I don't have any problem saying here right now that Jokic being white and Joel not being white is absolutely a factor. The NBA media is overwhelmingly white, and especially compared to the proportions of the league. And Joel's not European. Jokic is European. I think that another thing is probably the bias towards some of these catch-all metrics that the people talking about them don't really understand at all. We've had this discussion before on the podcast with
MOC.
with Mike O'Connor, and they're basically nonsense, and people don't grasp them. And I think one thing that doesn't help is that they get this air of legitimacy because one of the biggest names that is behind them is John Hollinger, who created PER and is like the advanced stats guy in the national media. Meanwhile, he was like the least successful GM ever. So I don't think it really proves their usefulness in that way. And I think we're at a point where Joel is not going to, get that kind of national talk, and we just need to remind ourselves that it doesn't matter. And it's probably not likely they win, but that is kind of an indictment on the team and on everything, and him in some smaller ways. And the goal is to win. The goal is not to get compliments from Zach Lowe. The goal is not to have an MVP necessarily, as nice as it would be, or to have John Hollinger's metrics really like your team, or to dominate first take that day. The goal is to win a championship. The Sixers really haven't gotten close in a way that to be fair, that Luka did last year in the playoffs. That he made it to the conference finals. The Sixers have not. Jokic was in a Mickey Mouse conference finals, but he was there. The Sixers need to win, and I don't really care about the respect they get. I want them to win. They haven't won, and that is really more important, and that's really what matters.
All right, agree with all that. Emily, what's the standings?
Okay, so I double checked them today, and they were kind of off. I had them messed up, but I counted, and I think they're right now. So over the past 2 weeks, Steve has gone 6-0. So big jump up. Me and Dan are good. We both went 4-2. But right now I'm 17-16, and then you guys are 15-18.
So we're combined under 500. Emily's the only one over 500.
Barely.
Yeah. Do you remember that one season? It was the season we lost to the Hawks when we were all just killing it. And it was you had to it was like a ballsy play to pick the Sixers to lose a game.
Oh yeah.
I missed that.
That was good.
I mean, I don't miss that season. That season was kind of a pain.
No, that's right.
That was the Simmons season. But I miss when a loss was that was a risky play. Now it's
I'm putting this out there, but we should come up with a thing that we win and lose at the end of the year.
We say that every year.
We say it every year. We never do it, but I'm telling you, it's a good idea. All right. This week, there's 4 games. Odds I get it wrong, very high. Sixers play Friday night at New Orleans, back-to-back at OKC. Then, and then that's OKC is New Year's Eve. So they all have to kiss at midnight. Then on Monday, They go home with New Orleans, and then Wednesday, home Indiana.
Very good, Steve.
Thank you very much. New Orleans, back-to-back, OKC on the road, and then home, New Orleans, Indiana. What say you, Dan?
You know, I don't think they're going to lose 2 straight. I think that they will win in New Orleans, and I think they'll beat the Thunder. So I think they win both legs of the back-to-back. I think they then lose at home to the Pelicans on Monday and win at home against Indiana on Wednesday. So 3-1.
Emily?
All right, I'm gonna say that they lose to the Pelicans in New Orleans, then they beat Oklahoma City, and then they beat the Pelicans at home, and then they beat Indiana. So 3-1, but lost to the Pelicans in New Orleans.
I've got 3-1 with Dan's permutation. So I've got beat the first New Orleans game, beat OKC, lose the second New Orleans game, and then beat Indiana. That's what I've got. Go ahead.
No, you go.
You go, Dan. Please.
Mine was a change of topic, so I want to hear what you have to say.
Change it.
Well, I was just going to say, while we wait for Yaron here.
Yep.
I just feel the need to share with you guys that I actually watched a movie this week.
Oh, what was that?
I watched Glass Onion, the new Knives Out movie.
Thoughts?
It was pretty good. I
watched that last weekend.
I also watched it.
Yeah, and you know what? I never saw the first one.
Oh, I like the first one though.
Do you know who was in Knives Out 2?
Yeah, your girlfriend. Here.
My girlfriend.
Wait, what? Fiance, right?
No. My former co-star, Madeline Klein.
Wait, wait, what? Wait, hang on.
Her on-screen boyfriends include Dave Bautista, Steve Lippman, host of the Gastroenteritis Blues. We're going to take a quick break here. The next thing you hear will be us with Yaron Weitzman.
Wait, who did
Dan's Googling her.
Who did she play? She played
Whiskey.
No way. Wait, what movie was she in with you?
This Is the Night. All right, we're back here with Yaron Weitzman of Fox Sports. Yaron, of course, is the author of Tanking to the Top. Yaron has been on with us, I believe, at once or twice. I'm not sure. And then, Yaron, I've interviewed you for the site about your book, Tanking to the Top. I interviewed you. It's one of those moments at the very beginning of the pandemic. I think it was like March, 20th.
That sounds about
2020. Right. Yeah. We were on the phone, and it was a very odd time in life. And I remember that. And I read your book, and then I remember sending it to my uncle, who's a big Sixers fan, and feeling very unsafe about how to sanitize it and send it to him safely. Yeah. But he lived, and we're all good.
You just, that was my whole, it's fun. So it's a tangent, but it's funny. So the book did fine. I would have liked to have seen in normal times, and people sometimes say like, oh, pandemic, everyone was reading, which again is not necessarily true because people didn't have as much time. But I remind people, the book came out, like you said, at the beginning time. It was before, so March 17th was the day, 2020. So
right.
The Rudy Gobert game was March 11th, right? So this was really early, again, couldn't get to the post office. The things that we kind of all learned how to do in the middle. Then it wasn't. I couldn't send the book to producers, the publisher couldn't access the books. I was sending my own, I was packaging it myself. And I remember being like, no, this is, I didn't go, this is Colin Cowherd's producer. So my wife, I got to try, I'm going to put the mask and the glove on and go walk there just for the chance, stuff like that. Yeah, so it's funny. It's interesting times. It's crazy. Yeah, that was not so fun, but better things, I guess.
But it's a great book, and people can go and get it now safely wherever books are sold. So yeah, it's the best. So recently you published an article, a feature interview with James Harden, Sixers guard,
yes,
on Fox Sports, and it's very detailed, and it's a real sort of look behind the curtain at Harden, a guy who doesn't do many of those, very, very few, which you wrote about in the story. What just overall stood out to you most in your time with Harden, sitting down with him?
Well, one of the things that stood out to me the most is in the lead up to sitting down with him was just how I don't know if I've told this, but how easy it was to do the interview, to get the interview. And I don't mean easy like, that stuff's not easy, but I have no relationship with James Harden prior to this year. I don't have a relationship with him now, but really, like, he didn't know who I was. We had nothing. I never covered him before. I probably written a couple stories here and there, but like never done anything extensive. I live in New York, but it's pandemic time, so there's no overlap in that stuff. You don't talk to these guys. But the Sixers were in Brooklyn for a shoot around at the beginning of the year, and I just went up to him and said, like, hey, I had these kind of questions. Would love to do a story. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. Talk to my guy, pointing to the Sixers PR. And I think Sixers PR was pretty shocked, happily, not upset, but just like very surprised because most guys don't say yes to that kind of stuff on his stature. And he didn't know me. So I found that interesting, which I literally just went up to him and asked. So I found that interesting. So, and that to me was sort of revealing in a way, because it's kind of, he knows the questions I'm going to ask, give or take, for the most part, right? He has an idea, maybe not, but got to have some idea. And I kind of told him beforehand, and I sent him a note. That's how it worked. You have to I had to remind him a few times. He said yes, but once they say yes, that's only step one of like 12 steps to actually getting the interview secured. And you don't, with some of the top players, you don't know until you're actually sitting down across the table from him. There's always like, those can think at any point. So that stood out to me. What was interesting, I mean, I don't know, like stood out. And then he made me, it's not connected, it's all connected. I had to wait like an hour for him. And I would say we were scheduled for like 2:00 in a Toronto off day. Him and PJ Tucker were shooting shit for like an hour and a half while like I was waiting for the room, which is probably a bit of a power play there, which is fine. But then when he came in, he was really engaging. Like turned his phone upside down, which again sounds stupid, but that's something that a lot of players don't do. Like put his phone down on the table. Mm-hmm. And what stood out to me in talking to him is like, I wrote about this. I was sort of prepared for the whole, I don't care about X, but let me tell you actually, right? I kind of knew that would be something he would do a lot of. But he was honest. That's what really stood out to me. He was, once he got past like that initial preamble of what people say is wrong, this and that, or that doesn't matter to me. But he was honest. And what's actually surprised me most, in a way, is the reaction afterward. Is I think, and I'd be curious to hear your guys, like hearing from fans and other reporters, people seem to have found the story endearing, or not endearing, sorry, found his answers. They found that the profile of the interview, the story made him come off more endearing in a way, or more human in a way, which I actually wasn't sure if that was going to be the case. But there's still some defensiveness and some of the stuff which you can nitpick about, like not certain jumpers or elimination games, or it's not all my fault. And I just thought I think it's interesting when you guys are open. And I think part of it is that a lot of these, I'll say A-list stars, right? We don't do top 25 guys, A-list star NBA guys aren't, they're not so open these days. And I understand why, but they don't do many of these things where they sit down and actually answer tough questions. Not to say I'm but like, I asked him stuff straight up, tough questions in an open way. And I think people want to hear that stuff.
Yeah, well, I think there's something inherently human about him agreeing to it in the first place and sitting down with you and answering those questions. And he seem very inaccessible just in general, especially to us. We didn't follow him in Houston for all those years. And so it's like the fact that he was willing to go deep with you and I guess grant you access to some of the people in his life. Like, I think that where you're getting some of that he came off endearing in a way might be that, the fact that
for sure
that it exists at all,
I mean, it's funny. I've said before, like I would use this interview, like anytime I try to pitch PR people going forward, I would use this interview as an example of like, hey, here's like, you guys aren't, I'm not a reporter who thinks, and I think we talked about this around tanking to the top, right? I'm not a reporter who thinks anyone is required to speak to me. Like, I don't care. I mean, I do, but I don't, it doesn't matter to me. I can do my job without it. But I do think these guys lose something when they don't do it. Doesn't mean talk to everybody. It doesn't mean everything, but I do think there's something to be, there's a benefit to them. Obviously I'm saying this because it benefits me, but there's a benefit to these guys to talking to, and not doing just a Players Tribune piece because nobody cares about those, but like talking to somebody and letting them ask the questions that like, and I'm always confused that these guys don't want to do it because, don't you want to answer if they're seeing stuff on First Take? Don't they want to give their thoughts, like why Stephen A. at First Take is wrong, why they're not a choker, why this or that? Like I know I would. So I'm just confused. Like, why wouldn't you want to just do that, answer that question that way?
Which is a failing of Hinkies, I think we talked about, which was like a very sort of periodic check in about sort of just the way he wanted things to go, which was not to answer some of the blowhard stuff, but just to simply like state of the union, like what his messaging wanted to be, you know. Yeah,
exactly.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, to your point about, a lot of people thinking Harden, came off a bit more endearing from that interview. And, I think one thing that stood out to a lot of people was, people had some positive takeaways about his relationship with Joel Embiid, and that had people feeling pretty good. So segue to Christmas Day. So Adrian Wojnarowski comes out with a report that, if Harden were to leave Philly, which, it seems to already be in his mind, and, those rumors had been floated a bit earlier, even before that report, that, he's interested in returning to the Rockets. I think we saw even as recently as today, I want to say Dave McMenamin had something to say about it in relation to the Rockets possibly keeping Gordon and being interested in going in on Harden next year. And it was like, I don't think the exact wording was like, if it doesn't work out in Philly, but just if he doesn't want to stay in Philly. And I think there were some notes there about how, Harden has a really good relationship with, Tad Brown and with Daryl Morey, but, it's a work in progress with Embiid and with Doc Rivers. And the Embiid part was at least, I think for me, something that I had been feeling good about until I read that. So I guess, from what you can gather, from what you know, why do you think, Harden and his camp, would leak something like that on Christmas Day, obviously biggest NBA day in terms of watching games of the regular season, when he can't be extended by the Sixers right now, and free agency isn't for a while, and really they were on a 7-game winning streak. Things seem to be going pretty well.
So that was a weird. That whole situation I found interesting and a little weird. So there's a couple of things that I guess I'm gonna pick some words, choose carefully, but I don't think that was leaked, right? I don't think I really I'm not saying I don't know. I don't think that was leaked. I don't think that was like a conscientious move where like James Harden had somebody close to him. And James Harden, by the way, doesn't have an agent. He has people in his life who are managers. He doesn't have an agent. That's something to keep in mind a little bit in terms of and those guys are plugged in and they talk to, aside from me, I'm sure they talk to plenty of other plugged in reporters like the Wojs and Chefs of the world and stuff like that. So that was weird. So I don't think it was leaked, right? That has been a rumor. So James Harden, I'm going to do the thing where I heard it, but I heard it for a while, like going back even last year, right? Houston, I think people, but you never know with NBA gossip sphere, and it's a game of telephone with people. Is it real? Or people saying, what I think could happen? I think he's going to try to go back to Houston, and Rafael Stone's going to get him back, and they'll get Daryl back. You just never know, right? But this has been something that's been whispered about in the NBA ether for, I don't know, going back to Brooklyn times. So that's where that started for a while. In terms of, I guess I'm all over the place. Let me go to the Embiid thing. The Embiid thing, the stuff I wrote, like that, I 100% believe that. And like I said, so Daryl has the quote in there about no one superstars have ever got along better. Of course, he has to say that because Daryl only runs their team, and also his superstars are all James Harden anyway. Like, who are the other superstars? Like, it's all going to be, who is he comparing it to? So James Harden and Chris Paul, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, right? Whatever. But I checked with people who and again, I could be being played, right? But I checked with people who have no reason to do so before I wrote that, being like, hey, I'm calling, and that's what I do. So like, if I can, I'm calling this. If I write this, am I wrong? And I was told no, right? Like, is this wrong? And I was told no. And I think I wrote that in the story, right? That I checked with people off the record too, who could be honest with me. So that's off the court. On the court, 100%. Like when I wrote the story, and maybe that's what it was alluding to, and maybe the details weren't there. I think something could be missed, but on the court, it's definitely a work in progress. Though even in the week and a half, whatever, when was my story published? 2 weeks ago? They seem to have taken a giant step, not just forget winning games, but they seem to have, the melding of roles seems to be clicking a little more, right? Where like Joel's the number one scorer, James is really a point guard, figuring things out. Like they seem to be working well. There's that. I'm just going all over the place. All the speculation about James Harden in his future, like I find it's all speculation. I'm sure it's true, but this whole Sixers team, nothing we said, it's all relevant to the playoffs. Like any guesswork we do, it's all relevant because the playoffs is going to determine so much of this. Like it's not just it's going to determine James Harden, Doc Rivers. I don't know, maybe Daryl. I'm not reporting anything here, but like Daryl Morey. Let's say they lose in the first round. Let's say they go through a cold streak and they play Cleveland and they lose. Like, would anyone be shocked if they lost in the first round at Cleveland in a 6-game series? I'm making this up, right? In a 4-5 matchup. I don't know, right? And how does that work then for Doc or Daryl when the ownership group that is really desperate and interested to get out of the second round? If they make the finals, like is James Harden going to bolt? I'd be shocked. Again, you never know. But like to me, it's all this group specifically, and this team is one of the teams really like the cliche of nothing matters until the playoffs. Like it's for this team more that really applies. So we can guess, we can speculate, but I just the emotions and the Sixers fans know it's better than anyone, right? With Harden last year, with Simmons 2 years ago, right? What happened to the playoffs? That has such a strong impact, and like that matters so much more than the 4 months, whatever, 6 months before that. So it's speculation. So yeah, I would James Harden. I think it's pretty open out there, like in NBA world. He wants to go back to Houston at some point. Does that mean to sign a one-day contract? Does that mean a 1-year deal when he's 40 years old? Does that mean this year? Who the hell knows? He probably doesn't even know yet either, right? I really think that's the case. I think his answer was pretty obvious. Like he didn't say no, but he seemed pretty stunned by the idea. Like it was clear to me, aside from doing my own reporting, but it's clear to me that wasn't like some strategic leak that he was expecting to happen, right?
In your story, you were going back to like the Harden and Embiid situation. If they're having a good interpersonal relationship off the court, but it's the on the court work that thinks that they might foresee him leaving the Sixers ultimately. Did you get any inkling from your story? Did that come across in anything that he said about working with Embiid? Like obviously he wouldn't say it outright. Did you get any idea of like what kind of role he would rather take on? Like if that is something that they're working on, like what is the point that they're working towards? If you got any idea from talking to him.
Yeah, no, that's actually good. And I should like things that stood out to me. I thought he was also pretty honest in that. Like, I think I even the quotes in there, right? Like when I came in last year, Joel, and that was hard for me, right? I was kind of surprised that he said that and said how like that was hard, and he kind of wants to go back to being James Harden, whatever that means. Because also he's not fully doing that right now. So yeah, I think that's definitely hard for him. And this is like he's far from the first superstar to struggle with the aging process. Like this is the oldest story in basketball, right? Like these superstars, and aging superstars are the hardest thing because they think of themselves as the alpha, and at a certain point you're not anymore on your own team and also with an ecosystem. And he's still really good. Like that's the part of it. Like, he's still really, really good. Joel Embiid's better. I don't know if James Harden would admit that, but like I don't know. They're playing NBA players who would say like I'm the best player in the league, and like guys who aren't good at all. So that's okay. It's more about how they go about playing. So I have any inkling? No, but like again, the playoffs is going to be the key part because let's say the first bad game he has, like that's going to be interesting, right? The first game where he maybe has 11 points on, I don't know, 2 for 9 shooting, doesn't get to the foul line because his three's not falling, right? And they lose, and first take is all over in the next day, and it's all same old James Harden. Like how does he react to that the next game? Does he kind of go into a shell? Does he try to take over the offense, try to prove people wrong? Like that to me is going to be the tell in terms of where he's at, or can he kind of just go with it and keep doing his thing? So, and by the way, I'm saying James Harden, like a big part of that's on Joel Embiid too. We all focus on James Harden, like that's on Joel Embiid. You can be the alpha and the number one guy, and he deserves to be, but maybe don't take passive aggressive shots at James Harden in press conferences, being like, the offense is moving really well now, we have to keep this going, stuff like that. Like James Harden would hear that stuff. And I don't know, James Harden, no one from James Harden's camp, and James Harden did not tell me anything that like that stuff bothers him. Like that was never brought up to me, but I don't know, being a human, I'm sure James Harden sees those quotes, or when Joel Embiid, like Joel, he's very honest in press conferences, and it's great, I guess, for reporters, and I like that as it's and fans probably like it, but it's on him to be sort of the leader of the team, and that's never been his strong suit, right? Being like a leader and bringing the team together and kind of seeing this personality needs this and this personality needs that, and how can I bring the most out of guys, and how can I adjust a little bit to meld with these guys. I should say he did adjust it with Ben Simmons, but just like that's not his strong suit. So it's on him as well to kind of figure out ways to make the partnership work.
You mentioned, I think early in your story, you described in detail Harden after Game 6 against Miami last year, sort of going underground and being unreachable and heartbroken, and sort of a very vivid recounting of Harden just being so upset over the Game 6 loss. And I'm just wondering how you square that with watching that game when he looked like he just would have rather been anywhere else. He just looked like he didn't give a fuck about playing in that game. So I'm just wondering how you and we talked about after your article came out on the podcast, like there just isn't a satisfying answer that he can give you to that question.
Sure.
Obviously it's your job to ask him that question, but like, and he almost says as much, I believe, to you, like there's no answer that he can give. And I almost wish that he would just say, like, listen, it was a bad game. There's nothing I can do about it now, but like, we have to win now. But like, he talks about sort of the Joel stuff, or, if he mentions the hamstring, it's like, but he also had some really great games in that playoff run. So the effort part of it as a fan, or for Sixers fans, was the hardest part to watch, especially that second half when he just, so it's hard to reconcile he and his circle talking about how heartbroken he was about the loss, when it seems like he could have at least tried more in that game if it meant that much to him. So how did that come across to you?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think my take on it is sort of like the despondency. Is that a word? I'll make it up if it's not. But like,
sure,
that had sort of hit before, like in middle of Game 6, before Game 6. Like that was already the beginning of the retreat, right? That was sort of that would be my take on it. Like just sort of not knowing what to do, and just like, and I'm not, by the way, it was an off performance, like, and that's why I asked about it. Like, the effort. What are the numbers? 2 foul shots in the whole second quarter. Did he not? 2 foul shots in the game, 0 in the second half. What was the stat? The stats are ridiculous.
Something
right?
like that.
It was ridiculous. So I think that was sort of what happened. Like, I think he just, like, it's almost like the chip self-destructed, like didn't know how to react, right? Like, this is not going well and I don't know how to react. And I'm sure that also led to like his emotions after, just knowing, like, again, he knows how he played. Guys aren't idiots, right? Like they know how they played, and he even if he was trying to lie to himself, he can pick up a box score, right? It's not even like one of these, like, what was it, LeBron's last game in Cleveland or whatever. He had the triple double that, like, they lost and he looked horrible, but he had a triple double in the game with the Celtics. So you could say, oh, how was he bad? Like the box score wasn't. If you just look at a box score, whatever the points were, like, there's no lying. So that would be that's kind of how I understood it. But it's a good question. That's sort of what's so interesting, is that, like, you saw this guy sort of last year, this like, I'm repeating this word, but this alpha completely just, again, it's like, self-destruct in the middle of a playoff series.
Yeah.
So, shifting gears a little bit, I want to ask you about Doc Rivers. Sixers fans in general.
They love Doc. Yeah.
Not big fans of him. I think as a podcast, we've been we're not big Doc fans either, but we've been, I think, maybe a little bit more defensive of Doc than most other people, just, based on some of the successes the team has had. That said, I think our stance is, if they got rid of him, we wouldn't be super upset. And a lot of times if they kept him, we wouldn't be super upset, depending on when you ask us. I kind of think that, we've talked about this too, like the fans tend to project how they feel onto the players, onto Daryl, because a lot of fans like Daryl probably for his, maybe better media savviness than Doc has. And, they want to think that, they don't like Doc. These guys don't like Doc. And I was wondering, what sense you have, how, obviously Woj talked about, the work in progress relationship that Harden has with Doc. But, what is your sense, the Sixers players, how they feel about Doc, and then also, how Daryl feels about Doc, and if he, didn't like Doc for some reason, is it, does he have the green light from ownership to move on from Doc? Obviously, there's a lot of money involved in that, and ownership hired Doc before Daryl. So where does he kind of stand in the organization there?
The Doc thing's funny. Okay, so everyone, I call it, like, 2 layers removed from the Sixers and, the inner circle, whatever, is convinced that Doc stinks or everyone hates him. Darryl doesn't like him. Darryl wants to fire him. Everything you would expect, right? And then people closer will say, no, we like Doc, and Darryl doesn't have an issue with Doc, and yada, all that stuff. What's the answer? It's probably usually somewhere in the middle there, right? I actually have trouble. Like, I'll make reporting calls all the time. People, Sixer stuff. Sometimes I think I have a decent reputation as knowing some Sixer stuff, right? So people will ask me that Sixers. Oh, I've heard this, and I'm always like, that's not what I've heard. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being played. Maybe things like that's not what I've heard. So does Darryl have? So to answer your question, like, could they make a change? Yeah, I bet you could. I've never spoken to Darryl about this, right? But I bet we can. I would guess his view of coaching is not one that says it's the most important thing. I bet you can find quotes of him like Sloan Conference or stuff like that, or even just anything talking about how not that like coaches don't matter, but that probably and I would probably agree with this. Coaches matter, but how many are difference makers, right? So what's the difference between Doc Rivers and I don't know, Tom Thibodeau? Maybe it's an example because we don't like him, and I don't know, another decent coach, whatever. I can look at the standings, whoever it be, right? Mike Malone, whatever. I make up guys, right? Like guys who are good coaches, but like, is there a difference? So like, yeah, Spoelstra, if you want to get one of those guys like that, Spoelstra, whatever. People would say Nick Nurse, now Toronto can't win a game, right? So like, I would bet that's where Darryl sort of aligns on that like, that's not the biggest thing, and his job is sort of more roster management. And I think he's pretty hands off in terms of how, I don't think he's micromanaging rotations, schemes, things like that. I think he's pretty hands off. Like you're talking about in the story, even the stuff in the story, we're talking about how James and Joel would meet with Doc and talk about how to work things out and stuff like that. And I hope so on the record. But I asked Darryl, like, you part of that? He said, no, like he lets Doc do that. Like that's Doc's domain. You trust him, and Doc has great people. And if Doc wants numbers, there's people, people who can do it, all that. Not that him and Doc don't talk, right? But like that's coaching domain. So to answer your question, like I think that's kind of my read. Do the players? I have no read. I don't know about the players. Like I don't know that I would assume they're fine. I've never been told either way that they like him or don't like him. So I don't know. I mean, I assume players seem to respond to him. That's sort of always been his thing in his calling card. And like you said, you can construct plenty of like, if I was making the pro Doc case, Tobias has got a new role, Tyrese Maxey's gotten better, Harden and Embiid things working a little bit. The Anthony Melton looks great with them and finding a role. Like you can build. Shake Milton now seems to maybe turn the corner. Like I can build it. I can build the case anti as well. But to me, it's not like he's this egregious, awful coach. And like, so I know the backup five stuff is a bit of a mess, but that's always been the case. So was it Doc, Brett, whoever, get Popovich and you're like, will it be any difference? I don't know. So that's kind of where I'm at that. But like, if they flame out in the first round, do I expect them to come back? No one's told me that. But I just like, that's just kind of NBA logic and knowing how the ownership group operates.
And as a quick follow-up to that, I mean, I think, when we talk about fans kind of projecting, things they like onto Darryl, things they don't like onto Doc.
Yeah.
The perfect examples are like, oh, the Sixers signed DeAndre Jordan. Well, that's a Doc guy. And we always say, like Darryl does control the roster. Obviously, like you say, he and Doc talk, but it's kind of frustrating. And I want to get your take on it because maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe all of these people are right, and all of these bad backup five signings, these are Doc guys. He wants them, and he talks to ownership, and ownership tells Darryl, go work it out. I don't know, but to me it seems a little hard to believe that every signing we don't like is a Doc guy, and every signing we like is a Darryl guy. I mean, what's the give and take here between those two of them controlling the end of roster spot?
I think it's together. I think they work together. Like I think I was a media day where Darryl gave Doc Rivers credit for bringing in Montrezl Harrell. Now maybe that was like 3D chess, right? Because that hasn't worked out. But I remember also Daryl Morey, somebody who like I think to this day he still swears that the Russell Westbrook deal was made. The Houston Rockets, the Chris Paul for Russell Westbrook swap, which was not like a deal. Like he still goes down with that one. Says like, no, that was me, when like everyone knows it wasn't, right? So maybe there's like maybe there's someone who has like double secret access that I don't have that would hear otherwise, or that would hear. But like Daryl's pretty consistent with that, and in terms of not making sure people at least think, if not understand, that like they're working together and on the same page. Again, I could be being played, others could be played, who the hell knows? But I go closer to you. Now, again, plenty of people say I'm wrong. It's like I could be wrong, and people who like come close to knowing, not just people, not just fans, right? So plenty of people say I'm wrong, and that I'm just maybe I'm just not getting the good stuff, which is very, very possible. So I don't know.
And then to kind of come full circle on it, why do you think that James Harden agreed to do this interview? Like, do you think he caught him on a good day? Did he just
I'm
like
gonna
your
find
face?
ways.
Like, what was it?
By the way, so what would you say? Do you think I like my face? I'm gonna see if I can find this quote, because his quote was pretty close to that. And I tried putting it in, and my editor cut it out. Give me 1 second. I know this is good podcasting.
We do this all the time.
Okay. I'm here. Yeah, you had some questions that you were going to ask me. I thought you were a nice guy, so I gave you my time.
Look at that.
All right, nice.
That's a good compliment.
So, that is, yeah. I guess I saw. Maybe you did like my face. That was kind of your question. I have a face that says I'm a nice guy. Yeah, this was at the end. I asked him like anything I missed, anything you want. Like I do that sometimes at the end of interviews. Be like anything we didn't talk about that you want me to know. And yeah, the answer was I don't know. I don't know what you're going to ask me, so I'm here. You had some questions that you were going to ask me. I thought you were a nice guy, so I gave you my time.
Yeah.
And then I said, did I live up to it? And he said, we'll see.
Wow.
So, yeah, so that's all I got. That's more on that. I don't know.
Sometimes that's all it takes. Just a nice looking,
I don't know. Yeah.
looking nice guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, my last question, unless you guys have anything else, is non sequitur to this stuff. The Kyrie stuff, you were very vocal about earlier in the year. You wrote about it.
Yeah.
As a Jew who follows the NBA, who writes about it, who podcasts about it, I was especially dispirited by what was going on, and not a big fan of the documentary he put out there, just personally. And
it was the editing for you.
It was the editing. It was a little choppy.
Yeah, I agree. Long-winded.
Yeah, a little long-winded. So I guess I don't even know if I have this formed fully, but I thought the work you did in and around it, and your speaking out was very helpful and great, and I thank you for it. But I guess I'm having a bit of a weird experience with it, where now they dragged him sort of kicking and screaming to apologize finally when they went into his wallet and suspended him without pay, and then he's like, all right, I apologize. So then he came back. They brought him back, and he's playing again. He's playing very well. They're on this win streak, and now it's just like, look at these Kyrie highlights, and it's like, I don't certainly believe that his opinion or what he's consuming or any of that kind of stuff has changed in any meaningful way. And I kind of think that whatever he thought then is likely what he thinks now, and all of that kind of stuff, because I just think it would be a little naive to think that the slap on the wrist that he was given then and the Instagram apology that he provided is any sort of like sea change that has happened within him and all of that kind of stuff. If that's what he was like putting out in the world and then defending multiple times, which was incredibly gross. So I guess the question is like, well, it's also the other thing that I run into is like, well, what did I want? What did I really want to happen? It's like, he apologized. So what's supposed to happen to the guy? Like, he retweeted this thing and then he was like an asshole about it. So what's supposed to happen? Like, where's he supposed to go? So this is kind of what happens. But I feel very icky about it when I see like House of Highlights tweeting his sick handle. And it's like, he's a great player and they're playing great. And I'm also duty bound to root against the Nets because of Ben Simmons. So that's also in there. So yeah. So what's your experience like now with the Kyrie stuff, now that he's just no longer a documentary enthusiast and he's just a basketball player?
So yeah,
that's a good
question. So first, I like the word though. Actually, I'm going to steal this because I like how you phrase this. Like the stuff he's consuming, I think that's a key part. So I'll come back to that. So because I think that's the key thing. Because I agree that has not changed. I think that's the issue, right? More than the opinions. I mean, those become your opinions, but that's the clear. And if you can look at his Instagram, the accounts he follows on Instagram and what they're putting out. and and like to me, I come back. I think I don't remember if I wrote this. To me, like this is all very easy. Like I can explain what happened with Kyrie here very simply, right? Which sounds like I'm talking down, but I just can't. But so I'll come back to that. But like, yeah, I found it really hard. You're talking about experience. Like that was one of the. I remember the first few games there. Like I was like when he was back in the middle of the whole hailstorm, like pre-suspension, post tweets. Like I was at games. Like I felt like it was depression. Like I felt sad. Like it's just an anger. I was just like down. Like I couldn't care about basketball and like Kyrie stuff, and it was more about that nobody else is caring. That's the part that got me, right? Like
yeah, that's the other thing.
The response from other people is what? Because like, okay, so there are lots of bad people. I shouldn't say bad. Kyrie's a bad guy, but people with opinions that hurt, right? Or do hurtful actions is a better way to put it, right?
Sure.
And you would like to think people then kind of show solidarity to people who've been hurt by those actions, right? And that was not happening. And for me, it was like kind of screaming at the wall there. And even to the point where like there was somebody, there was a Nets assistant coach who came up to me, who I know a little bit, and said like, "Yeah, I want to apologize to you." He goes, "I'm Jewish. Like, I'm sorry. I know it's really hard for you. I know it's like my guy doesn't mean anything. Like, but it was in a nice way. He wasn't defending it, but like, and that like." I think I ended up texting being like, that made such a difference. It sounds dumb, but just like to hear one person acknowledge it. Not that like I represent all Jews, but just like it was hard. Like those few days, it was really hard. It was, and so part of the reason I don't have a full answer to your question in terms of how I experience it now is like I got away from that. Like I haven't been to a Nets game. I think the last Nets game I went to was where I asked the question, the last one where Kyrie gave the press conference, the first press conference, right? I think I asked the question about like how you pick and choose, and he gave some bullshit answer, kind of revealing himself that he wants to be able to say what he wants when he wants and not have repercussion from it.
Yes.
Which was gave away the whole game. Right
Very
there, right?
famous
Like, cool.
answer.
Yeah. So after that might have been the last Nets game I've been to. They had road trips, they've been away, but like I needed to unplug. Like I just couldn't like not because like I can't look at Kyrie Irving anymore, right? But I just needed to like decompress. I told my editors I need to not write about the Nets for a minute here. Also, so there's that, and I haven't gone to a Kyrie press conference yet. Like I haven't had a thing where like I'm there and I have to ask him about pick and roll coverage and like is that going to make me? And I'm sure I'll be fine with it or whatever. But like, yeah, I found that it was really hard. So that you asked my experience, it was really hard and hurtful, and the lack again. It's a lack of this was what I was always tweeting, and like seeing more of it made me become more vocal about it. Like the lack of care that people seem to have towards combating anti-Semitism was what was hurtful. Right. And I don't think, and to me, I wrote this like that Kyrie anti-Semitism, not like I don't give a shit. Like that whole thing was so stupid. That whole conversation is so, I don't know, it oversimplifies the whole thing. It's besides the point. Like it doesn't matter what someone thinks or not. Like, I mean, I guess it matters, but labels are dumb. Labels are too simple. And like no one's, what does that mean? It's like, we've all had that where you tell your uncle he's a racist. Oh, no, I'm not. And like, it doesn't, because then you start arguing about how many Jews they know, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
no, you can't be anti-Semite because like I have a Jewish agent, I love him, or like, that's not the point. The point is you share harmful, you promote anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic tropes that are dangerous and that historically have led to deaths, right? That's like the point I was trying to hammer home the whole time. Like there's not random, there's like a specific direct chain of events here that have happened for thousands and thousands and thousands of years based off people doing what Kyrie Irving did. Doesn't mean Kyrie Irving's responsible for death, and if he just said, "Oh, my bad, I didn't realize," fine. But like, what's happening is he wants to be a scholar, and he thinks he's a scholar, and to him, that means watching Instagram videos. I think even when the Earth was flat, he said he did his research on Instagram, right? Like that's an incredible. To me, that was always the most incredible line that was underplayed. Like, forget that he thinks the Earth was flat. If he said he read that in a book, that's different. But he said he learned the Earth is flat by doing research on Instagram. Like that's an incredible sentence, right? Like the idea of research on Instagram that's like an oxymoron. Like that phrase by itself. So he's on that. He's on his accounts, and these accounts are, and I mean it's a whole separate thing, but their accounts are like very. There's an issue now in terms of certain politically, from super lefty black politically inclined accounts where there's issues with Jews on some of those, right? And not that Jews don't have their own issues or stuff. And they're sharing like Farrakhan and other accounts, right? And that's who's being put in. That's what Kyrie's seeing. And if you look at the accounts that Kyrie is following, you'll see all those, right? So I mean, that's how it's happened, and I have no doubt that. I mean, he probably didn't watch the movie. I know he said he did. I don't think he watched the movie. I don't know. So now I'm rambling, but just it was really hard. It was really hard, and I'm kind of curious to see how it plays out for the rest of the year as I kind of start covering the Nets as a basketball team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Then.
Oh, I just wanted to say real quick. I mean, it's a bit of like a sad full circle here because you were our first guest, and on our very first episode back, during COVID, that summer we talked about anti-Semitism. That was, the Deshaun Jackson time, and whether it's Deshaun Jackson, I think Steven Jackson, Ben Simmons' sister, just like from everywhere. I know, you can't say this your own because of your relationship with, people around the league, but I just want to say real quick that I think, Kyrie Irving is really dumb. Like, just as like you talk about, how he wants to be a scholar and stuff. And, when he describes, his ideal view of, his free speech where he can kind of say what he wants and everyone leaves him alone. I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what free speech is, which is, the people around you also have free speech. So when you say
that's
things
always a thing,
using your free speech, they can use theirs to disagree with you, to tell you they think that what you say sucks. And it doesn't mean that you're being oppressed. It means that other people are voicing their opinions just as you get to voice yours. And if you don't like what they're saying about you, well, then maybe you should reflect on the things you're saying, because these are people with their own thoughts that are, using their own rights to kind of stand up for something and to kind of, share what they know and what they believe. And so I think, he's as much as he wants to, come off as this really smart person, I think the Instagram research and everything he says, everything he's always said has kind of always, and before it got to the whole anti-vax, anti-Semitism stage of things, I think a lot of people in the NBA world liked to defend him, even with the bizarre flat earth stuff and stuff like that, which I always thought was just off, like, because I think it's a clear, not to say that they're the same severity, but there's a clear path down, conspiracy theory rabbit holes that are just nonsense and, getting towards more.
For sure. That's what I want to
question everything, that kind of stuff.
Once you start, I mean, again, so like once you start on conspiracy theories, I'm not making this up. I've been joking to NBA reporter friends and not NBA friends, being like, whatever, for the past 2 years before this, I would say whatever odds you could give me that there will be Kyrie Irving will tweet out something anti-Semitic within the next 2 years, give me those odds. I will take them. Not because I think he's anti-Semite. Because
wait, this is a good place for a DraftKings ad. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead. Keep going.
Because once you're dabbling in conspiracy theories, that's where they end up, right? So to me, this was very predictable. Like I'm not making this like a I wish I've been joking about that. The other thing I want to add, I should say, talking about people not caring, like people being fake. Joe Tsai also handled this the whole thing was nonsense because tweets out nothing is big, nothing matters more than this, but then he doesn't spend Kyrie, but then he decides to become the arbiter for what, like, I met with Kyrie, he doesn't hate Jews, and now we're talking to ADL. Like, he was also flying, just making all this shit up, not knowing what he's doing, not actually caring, just doing PR. I don't want to just hammer Kyrie, right? Like, just all of it. Like, and he's the one where he could have, he's the one, like, he was the one who could have made done something in the beginning, and also not then like become the arbiter of Jew hate, right? That was weird too. So I don't know, the whole thing was a mess.
Yeah, I mean, there are these like, I wouldn't say like corners of the NBA, but frankly, it's any industry. These just happen to be famous people. Like, it's also entertainment. Like, there's actors, there's comedians, there's plumbers, there's, you know what I mean? Like, it's literally any industry, but these are very famous people, but that make you feel sort of gross sometimes when you're following it, you know?
For sure.
And of course, there's a lot of reasons that we follow it and enjoy it and love it and go back to it every year, because there's so much more great and there's a central theme and arc that we love. But like last week, you get a fucking Woj notification that Miles Bridges is on his way back, and Yaron, you don't have to comment on Woj or any of this shit, but like, you know, Miles Bridges, who was like a party to a domestic violence run-in, or it's like, what the fuck are you writing, man? Like, can you like look yourself in the mirror, buddy, and like, you know, put down the phone with his agent and just like have some self-respect. And, you know, there's like videos on Instagram of LaMelo going over and high-fiving Bridges at a game, and LeBron's there, and it's just like, man, what are we doing? So there's just like, there are different corners of what we end up dealing with here, and it's just, so like I said, it's not just the NBA, it's probably anything that you're gonna turn on, like after this I'm gonna watch the NFL game, and it's like, well, what the fuck am I watching there? So so.
But no, but I mean now we're more a party to their thoughts. Like, social media, these guys are sharing thoughts on all types of things or not, which is, again, this is like, you don't want to do this shut up and drill on. I really don't believe that. I really don't. But well, I want guys to talk, but they should just understand what they're saying beforehand, or be clear about it, or just understand what you're doing or what you're diving into and all that. It's interesting. I don't know.
Well, we like to end on a low note, so I'm glad we did this. And Yaron, all right. So listen, what can we promote for you here? Obviously, the Harden piece is out there, tanking to the top, which we cannot recommend enough. What else can we plug for you? Anything?
Yeah, check out Fox Sports. I think that's it. I don't know. What else? Nothing else to promote.
All right. Well,
what's your Twitter, Yaron?
Yeah.
It's my name, at Yaron Weitzman, at Jew on Twitter.
There it is. I love it. Great to see you. Thank you again for doing this. It's always great to have you on, and we hope to have you on again soon. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your vacation. I really appreciate it. Good to see you.
Thank you guys. And my boss are listening. I'm not on vacation, but no, thank you guys. I appreciate it. This was fun. Always fun. Thank you.
Good seeing you, man.
Thanks.
See ya.
And that's it for us. Steve J. Lippman, Gastro Blues Pod, Third and Girl, DA Peltz 13. Drew's not here, doesn't like Yaron. The Gastro, Drew said we changed the name on YouTube.
We changed it. Just say, you change
Gastro
it every
Blues,
week anyway. It doesn't matter. You make it up.
Gastro Blues Show live on YouTube. And
I know it's not that.
I know it's not that. But that's it. Hey, Happy New Year, guys.
Happy
Love
New
you.
Year.
Happy birthday,
Year.
Emily.
Thank you.
And that's it. Be safe and be great.
Bye.
Oh yeah, baby, I love you so, yeah, and I never